I shouldn't have married an old hag like you. Younger women are definitely better. I can't even walk with you in public, you're so embarrassing. If I could, I'd go back in time and start my life over. These were the words spoken to me by my ex-husband Tom 10 years ago. My name is Elizabeth, 48 years old. I married Tom, who was 5 years younger than me, when I was 33. I was a nurse, and we met at the hospital where I worked. Tom came to the hospital as a new doctor. He had just finished his residency, and he asked me about various things. I found his innocence endearing, and couldn't help but support him. But I was a nurse, and he was a doctor. Not to mention, I was 5 years older, so I didn't think of dating. Still, he talked to me almost every day, and I couldn't ignore him. We eventually started dating naturally. I was a bit concerned about our age difference, but he didn't seem to care at all. So, I stopped worrying too. We got married after 2 years of dating, but after 5 years of marriage, he started to verbally abuse me daily, saying he should have married a younger woman. He would chat with young nurses at the hospital in an exaggeratedly cheerful manner. But I tried to ignore it because it was a workplace. I didn't want to make a scene there, as it would only make me feel miserable. One day, Tom's cheating was caught. The other person was a former patient, but I had never met her because I was working in a different department. She was a woman 10 years younger than me. With an old lady like you, it's no wonder we couldn't have kids. My girlfriend is carrying my child. What? Tom laughed as if cheating were natural. I couldn't bear the thought of being with such a man any longer, so I agreed to the divorce. Of course, I told Tom and his girlfriend that I would be seeking alimony. This made Tom furious, like a raging fire. I was married to an old hag like you for 5 years, and you want alimony? I should be the one getting paid. Who would pay you anything? He ranted with more force than I expected. It seemed he never thought he'd be asked to pay alimony after having an affair. I even received a call from Tom's father, who seemed completely unconcerned with his son's wrongdoing, saying that it's natural for a young man to be attracted to a young woman. I was appalled. Tom insisted that he would never pay, so I had no choice but to consult a lawyer. I couldn't back down quietly after all the horrible things he said and his affair. The lawyer told me that demanding alimony was my right, and I left everything to them. I often heard that getting a divorce is more difficult than getting married, and I truly felt that way. Thanks to the lawyer, I was able to receive the proper alimony, terminate the lease on the apartment we shared, and start living alone. I changed my last name from Evans back to my maiden name, Britton. The only silver lining was that Tom had switched to another hospital. I wouldn't want to be in a hospital with a greedy old hag like you, he said as a parting shot. He must have thought that divorcing because of his infidelity and marrying his mistress right away would inevitably cause resentment among others. But I was impressed by how well prepared he was, having already found a new workplace. However, you can't keep people from talking. I couldn't help but hear the whispers about how I was dumped by my younger husband, and it felt like everyone was looking at me that way. Eventually, I became paranoid that someone was always spreading rumors about me, and it took a toll on me mentally. In the end, I also quit the hospital. I spent some time aimlessly, but since I love working and being active, I decided to look for a new job. Fortunately, I found a small maternity clinic just 2 stops away from my current residence that was hiring nurses, and I was hired on the spot. It was a small hospital with a minimal number of doctors and nurses, but it was a comfortable workplace where everyone got along with the patients. Miss Britton, you're very observant and well-liked by the patients. We're lucky to have you. Thank you! But my peaceful days didn't last long. A pregnant woman who had been referred from another hospital arrived, and when I heard her name, I thought, huh?
Sarah Evans, the same name as Tom's mistress. I checked to see if it was a coincidence. Her husband's name was Tom Evans, a doctor. No doubt, my ex-husband. Tom's hospital didn't have an obstetrics department, and they had recently moved nearby and were referred to this hospital. I had changed back to my maiden name after the divorce, and we had never met face to face. She didn't seem to recognize me either, but I never imagined I'd run into them here. I hesitated to tell anyone that she was my ex-husband's mistress, so I kept quiet for a few days. Then, one day, Tom came with his wife for her checkup. Huh? Tom's eyes widened when he saw me. He must not have expected me to be here. I didn't want to meet him here either. What are you doing here? At Tom's words, his wife seemed to realize who I was. Wait, is she... Did you come to this hospital just to harass us? Of course not. I was here first. There's no way I could have known that Tom's new residence was near this hospital. But Tom wouldn't listen to my side of the story and accused me of following them around. You're stalking me to harass me, aren't you? Don't be ridiculous. Why would I do that? You're a greedy woman who squeezed money out of me after being dumped because you're old. Who knows what you'll do? He shouted this in the examination room, and everyone found out about our relationship. Everyone's stares felt piercing, and even though I thought Tom was in the wrong, I felt uncomfortable. Oh, I'm scared! I felt like I've been looked at maliciously ever since I came here. What if something happens to my baby? His wife added insult to injury by saying this with fake tears in her eyes. I don't know what she's capable of, so please don't let her get close to my wife, Tom said firmly. The doctor in charge then urged me to leave the examination room. It probably wasn't that they suspected me, but the only way to defuse the situation was to have me step out. I understand that patients come first, and I didn't want to be there either, but I felt miserable. I started to feel uncomfortable with people around me, as I didn't want the details of my divorce to be known. To make matters worse, Tom's wife continued to come to the hospital and badmouth me every time she came. Although everyone knew I wasn't in the wrong, the other person was a patient. Moreover, she was pregnant and needed to be taken care of. No one could say anything, as they didn't want to upset her nerves and cause health issues or interfere in personal matters. As a result, my comfort in being there only worsened. There was still more than 6 months until her due date, and I couldn't bear the thought of spending all that time in this kind of atmosphere. Even though it was a good workplace, I submitted my resignation to the hospital. It's a shame, but there's nothing we can do, said the director, whose face seemed somewhat relieved. I felt like I was being punished, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. Exhausted by everything, I couldn't bring myself to look for a new hospital to work at and return to my parents' rural home. They welcomed me without saying anything. At first, I couldn't bring myself to do anything, but I felt guilty for just staying at home every day. So I decided to take a part-time job at a nearby supermarket. It was my first time working outside of a hospital, but it was refreshing and a nice change of pace. I loved being a nurse, and I felt a sense of fulfillment in it. But it was a workplace where I was responsible for people's lives, and the weight of that responsibility was immense. There wasn't a single day when I could let my guard down. Being away from that life was emotionally uplifting. 3 years after returning home, I was offered a full-time position at the supermarket. It seemed my hard work was recognized, and I was genuinely happy to accept the offer. 4 years later, a matchmaker approached me. Are you interested in giving an arranged marriage a try? Excuse me? I have just the right person for you. The person who brought this up was the store manager. At 45, I had no intention of remarrying, so I politely declined. But the manager was persistent. The other person was a 47-year-old divorcee like me, with a similar reason for the divorce: a cheating spouse. It had happened 20 years ago. In the end, I couldn't refuse, and we agreed to meet. Given our ages, we decided to meet directly without involving any intermediaries. When I arrived at the designated restaurant, my counterpart was already there. As I entered the room, he suddenly stood up and bowed deeply, accidentally bumping his forehead against the table. Ouch! He raised his face, which was completely red. I couldn't help but laugh, thinking that such a thing like in a comic would happen these days. Hi, I'm James. Thank you for coming today. Nice to meet you. I'm Elizabeth. Thanks to the initial accident, it didn't take long for us to get comfortable with each other. As I listened to his story, it turns out this arranged meeting happened because he fell in love with me at first sight when he came to our supermarket while on a business trip. He asked for this meeting to be arranged. It seems his college senior is actually the manager of the main store. I'd like to have a serious relationship if possible. I came with the intention of refusing, but in the end, I couldn't say those words, and instead, I found myself wanting to see him again. And so, after dating for half a year, we decided to get married. Both my parents really liked his personality and were genuinely happy for us. Living with my husband, who always thinks of me, was truly a blessing. Since we were both of a certain age, we never wanted children from the start. We just hoped to live a peaceful life together, hand in hand. But when I turned 48, my health began to deteriorate. When I went to the hospital for a checkup, it turned out that I wasn't just sick, but pregnant. I never imagined that I would get pregnant at this age. And I didn't think my illness was morning sickness. I think my husband felt the same way. It seems like there's a baby. When I said that, my husband naturally replied, That's great! So, who's the lucky one? Do I know them? Yeah, I think you know them very well. They're right in front of you. What? I'm the one who's pregnant. At my words, my husband made a puzzled face and was silent for a while. I thought to myself, of course this would happen. He looked down at my belly. Our baby? When I nodded, his eyes widened even more. I'm sure the news was so unexpected that his mind went into a panic. I mean, even I did. So that means we're going to be mom and dad? Seems like it. Really? Yeah. Whoa! With an uncharacteristic surprise in his voice, my husband hugged me. It's unbelievable! A miracle! A miracle. Is it okay for me to give birth? I never really considered not giving birth, but there's the issue of age. It's not like I'm not worried about what lies ahead. Even at the hospital, I was asked, what do you want to do? I know very well that there are risks associated with giving birth at an older age, for both the mother and child. I don't expect everyone around me to be supportive. I'm sure there will be people who will ask how old I will be when my child turns 20. I'm not without my fears about whether or not I can raise a child at this age. Still, I could never bring myself to end the life that has taken root within me. What are you talking about? Of course, yes! So when my husband immediately responded that way, I was happy. I thought it was his genuine feeling. But after a while, he started to worry about my health. It's easy to imagine various negative effects, even for a man like my husband. We discussed it at length and decided to go ahead with the pregnancy after talking with our doctor. My parents and his parents were surprised and worried, but they were also very happy. That's how we decided to give birth at a well-equipped, large hospital. The participating doctor was very compassionate and reassuring. And on the day of one of my checkups, not only the obstetrician, but also an internist was scheduled to be there, just in case. My husband was supposed to be there, but he had an unavoidable work commitment, so I went into the examination room alone. To my surprise, my ex-husband, Tom, was also there. Honestly, I couldn't believe I would run into him in a place like this.
Wait, seriously? You're the 48-year-old pregnant woman? Giving birth at that age is unbelievable.
Tom burst out laughing. The obstetrician and the nurse in the room looked confused, but Tom didn't seem to care. You have no right to say that to me.
I'm just worried about you. An old lady getting pregnant. That's just gross.
Is that how you treat your patients? I can't believe you would say something so hurtful to a pregnant woman who's already anxious. Are you really a doctor?
What are you acting so high and mighty for? Most of the patients at this hospital are wealthy, you know. Do you even understand that? You should leave before you embarrass yourself.
Excuse me, Dr. Evans. I'll be leaving anyway. I wouldn't dream of giving birth at a hospital with a doctor like you.
Yeah, get out of here.
Dr. Evans, that woman is the wife of the heir to the Miles Group, who has made significant donations to our hospital.
What?
Dr. Evans, you may not have known since you are new to our hospital.
No way, but she's my...
I have no connection to you. Even so, what you just said was terrible. As Mrs. Miles pointed out, I can't believe a doctor would say something like that. Just then, my husband arrived.
Sorry I'm late. My wife has been a great help to you.
He could clearly see that I was angry, and Tom was pale, sensing something was off.
Is something wrong?
I was just told by this man here, Dr. Evans, that giving birth at 48 is disgusting.
What?
Upon hearing those words, my usually mild-mannered husband's expression changed instantly. And because I mentioned Dr. Evans, he probably realized this man was my ex-husband. I had talked about my previous marriage, and he knew Tom's name and occupation.
Are you Dr. Evans? You insulted my wife, didn't you? Well, that's... What kind of hospital is this, where a doctor insults a patient? I can't trust my wife and unborn child to a place like this.
As soon as my husband finished speaking, the nurse, who I had left earlier, returned with the director.
I heard there was some rudeness. Director, we came to this hospital because my father recommended it. But I can't believe a doctor like this is employed here. It seems we chose the wrong hospital. I'm terribly sorry. That's not true. This man is not our doctor. What? I just fired him.
Director, what are you...
I didn't know he was like this either. I only took him in because a friend asked me to. We don't need a doctor who spouts such abusive language. He won't appear before you again. Wait, Director, what are you saying? Shut up and be quiet. Get out of here now. Don't come near our hospital ever again.
Hearing the director's words, Tom, who was shouting, "No, I won't leave, I don't want to," was dragged out of the hallway by the obstetrician. The director apologized so profusely that we felt sorry for him. So we regained our composure and sat back down. But my husband's anger didn't subside immediately, and he asked, "Is it because my father has donated to this hospital that you fired him? If not, would you let a doctor like him roam free?" The director shook his head in disbelief. Actually, it seemed that Tom had only been at the hospital for a week. Tom's father was a classmate of the hospital director, and after a recent reunion, he had begged the director to hire his son. The director had never imagined he would be like this and genuinely apologized. It's not like all the doctors at this hospital are like Tom. In fact, our obstetrician is a very good doctor. If Tom wasn't here, I want to give birth here, and my husband agreed. My father-in-law is the president of a major company with branches across the country, donating part of their profits to medical and welfare facilities. He had donated a large sum to this hospital because my mother-in-law was treated here for a serious illness when she was young. So my father-in-law recommended this hospital for my childbirth. A few days later, Tom contacted us, begging us to talk to the director and rehire him.
If you ask, they might reconsider, right?
Apparently, he had often angered patients with his arrogant attitude and had been moving from hospital to hospital. I can't think of him as anything but a fool for making the same mistakes over and over. My ex-father-in-law had told him there would be no future for him if he got fired again. However, I can't help but think that my ex-father-in-law's leniency is what made Tom this way. When the call came, my husband was with me. He took the phone from me, yelled at Tom that if he ever contacted us again or came near me, he would report him to the police for harassment, and Tom never called again, probably out of fear. Sometime later, on the way home from the hospital, we stopped by a convenience store and saw Tom working there. It seemed no other hospital would hire him anymore. He was crying and said his wife and child had left him. But I couldn't feel any sympathy. I just decided never to go to that convenience store again. The following year, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She's very adorable. No matter what happens, I'm determined to raise her with responsibility and care. But my husband has been smitten with our child since the moment she was born. He seems to be becoming a very indulgent father, so I have to be careful.